You asked me, why did they come? They used to hear that the streets in America were paved with gold. But they never lost their love for the old country.
They really saw that you've got to dress like the people here and speak like the people. You can go to church you want to. You can have what kind of food you want at home. You can dance a dubki. But you know, when you're out in public, you got to be seen as an American.
What Lebanese is to me, it really centers around my grandparents and what their values were and their faith and that sense of honor of being Lebanese.
It was to be expected. I mean, I knew had to leave Lebanon eventually, whether it's for schooling or to make a living, you know. So it wasn't a big shock. The shock was the realization that you cannot go back to Lebanon anytime you want.
Living outside Lebanon for me is like taking a fish out of the water. Really, that's how I saw it. But I don't know, it seems like that fish have managed to survive for a long time outside the water.
Between 1880 and 1914, over 360,000 left Lebanon for the Americas. The great majority emigrated because of an economic crisis gripping the country. Global prices of silk, the source of livelihood for most Lebanese, had plummeted, leaving many teetering at the edge of poverty. So first in tens, then hundreds, and then by the thousands, Lebanese families boarded steamboats for America.
حمانا كانت ضيعة زراعية مثل ما قلت لك. الصناعة اللي فيها اللي كانت كتير مزدهرة صناعة الحرير تلاشت مشي اللي بلش يطلع مواد اصطناعية ما عاد الناس يطلبوا الحرير وقفت صناعة الحرير فصار في فراغ هالفراغ ما تعبى دغري بشي تاني يعني ما حدا خطر بباله يعمل صناعة جديدة غير شكل هيدي سببت أول هجرة.
They wanted to find a better life, so they started roaming all over the world. My grandmother and her family went to South Africa, and then my dad's family moved to Argentina, then to Puerto Rico, and then to Mexico. And eventually they went back to Lebanon, and my grandfather got married to my grandmother. And then right around 1907, they came to the United States of America.
Being the gutsy person he was, he leaves his wife and family of 5 children, not able to speak a word of English, comes to America, comes through Ellis Island. And how he made it, I don't know. But anyway, the clerk asked him his name and so forth, what was registering, and he says, my name is Hanna Mahul Fahouri. Well, they knew Hanna was John. Got to Mahul, they put down M-A-C-K, and Fahouri never got in the ball game at all. So we got named by a clerk at Ellis Island.
They ended up on the railroad, the Wilmington-Weldon Railroad, going to Wilmington to see someone about buying stock. It was their plan to sell stock as peddlers. And this railroad passed through Goldsboro, and it stopped in Goldsboro, and they got out and they met people, and they liked what they saw, and they decided to come back here and to settle.
I'm gonna find me a ticket, get along. I'm gonna ride that train, babe, all night long. That Southern Jack, I mean that great big Southern Jack.
My father came to America and started a job that was harsh and hard, peddling with a bag of clothing and whatever else he could sell to people out in the rural areas.
They went door to door selling whatever peddlers sell, either cloth or thread or a certain amount of clothes or pots and pans, whatever it took. Then my father went back and came back with most of the family. This is prior to World War I. And they had made a little money. They bought a wagon, and they went around as peddlers on a wagon. And then eventually, my grandfather and his two sons, Charlie, my father, and Saad, his older brother, they opened a department store in where I grew up, Mooresville, North Carolina, called John Mack and Sons.
When my grandparents were up in the Northeast, in Lowell, Mass, and in Buffalo, they actually were working in mills, the steel mills and so forth. And then when they came down here, they transitioned into dry goods because my grandfather had, his best friend lived in Greenville, J.R. Abiunis. And I guess the Abiunis family was into dry goods, and he kind of showed him the ropes there. But it was a very close community. You know, clearly the weddings, the church events and so forth, they were always gathering together for. But one of the more charming things is every Sunday, someone from a neighboring community would drop by the house. It was interesting to see how everybody shared all the news, both from the old country and from, you know, other parts of North Carolina.
Because my grandfather was traveling salesman, he would travel from town to town and he would stay in these homes. So he would bring news about what's going on in Kinston. How are the Ellises in Wilson? What's going on with them? So he was the link, and so this kind of brought people more to Goldsboro, brought people to my home. I mean, you could sit in my living room in Goldsboro on a Sunday afternoon, and there'd just be kind of a parade of people coming in to visit, and you would sit there as a young boy and just hear those stories, and you'd have to kind of look through the cigar smoke, and then when you went to church within the Goldsboro community, I mean, you saw the same people.
Religion was a very, very important thing to the Lebanese people, and kept the Catholic Church going. Now has St. Michael's Maronite Church in Fayetteville, and St. Charbel Mission here in Raleigh. So we've come a long, long way. You know, remember the times, gosh, Sacred Heart Cathedral here in Raleigh, which is not a big church, but you never saw it filled, except 2 times a year, at Easter and in midnight mass at Christmas.
Their religion was very important to them. Their food, they loved Lebanese food. But I think those, and family, those were the 3 things they really held on to. But they adapted very quickly into speaking English and wearing American clothing and really wanted to blend in and become part of America.
عين الزمان سيفنا والألم سالنا والجبل منبت للرجال أولنا والعمل في سبيل الكمال كلنا للوطن.
The mountains of Lebanon provided a safe haven for Muslim and Christian religious sects for many centuries. By the end of the 1800s, over half of Lebanon's population were Christians, primarily Catholics. It was mainly these Catholics who left their homes for America. In Lebanon, identity centered on family, village, and religion. Race was not a category that held any meaning. Yet when Lebanese immigrants arrived in North Carolina, they entered a world that was mapped by race. The early immigrants' encounter with racial politics and divides varied. Many experienced discrimination and ridicule as darker-skinned foreigners.
We were the only Catholics in town of 1,000 people. And we were looked up on, we were looked down on, because we were Catholics and Lebanese both.
There were definitely 3 different classes of people. And 3 were not, that I've very experienced with, was not what you want to be. Number 1 was a foreigner. That's a no-no. And again, very few people had opportunities to engage with someone from another culture. The other was a Catholic, and the other was black. So of the 3 worst things that you could be, I'm 2 out of 3. That's not a bad batting average.
There were a few people that made disparaging remarks. We used to be called unattractive names, you know. We had a few people to do that, but after a few fights, our family convinced us that we shouldn't fight back. Just forget, you know, just consider the source and not fight back.
Mooresville, North Carolina, when I grew up, was 3,000 to 4,000 people. It was a mill town. If you didn't work at the mill, you were odd in the first place. Everyone worked at the mill. And the traditional mill housing, all cookie cutter, white, 2-bedroom wooden structures spread out around the mills. So, you know, we were very different. Most people were Baptist, some were Presbyterian. You know, we were dark, we were Catholics. We were a little bit of an oddity, there's no question about that.
I think that there was still an intense sense of unity and pride because you wanted to at least go to a town, albeit small, where there's maybe other Lebanese people involved. So I think there was that little community of a few, and that was enough probably to sustain you despite everything. You know, with success comes a lot of acceptance. And I think if you're a successful business person, you become accepted.
My mother's parents had 6 children, and they had a store. and it was 3 blocks from the house, and they would walk back and forth to the store, and she was able to take care of the children and spend time in the store. And she was, you know, a lot of times she would do the seamstress work in the store, you know, as well as, you know, working with the people. And then when you got old enough, you ended up in the store. So the children worked in the store. You know, I know we did, and I know our parents did too. So that was kind of where you learned.
As soon as we were old enough to touch the cash register, we had to go to work in the store. We were there when the war broke out, you know, so my mother was very generous to the soldiers. They would come, and actually they would give her their money to hold because they knew they might get drunk or some girl would take it away from them or whatever, but she held their money. And there were so many Catholic soldiers that they had to have Mass in the public theater, and there was no place else to eat. So my father had to open his restaurant on Sunday to feed the people who had to eat.
Some of the older men did not like the women working, and I remember them talking about that. That was something of a, you know, a little bit of a scandal, a woman who didn't stay home with her children. And of course my Aunt Hannah ended up staying home with her 2 children and helping raise the other kids.
Mother and Dad were always working. They were tough times, and you didn't know any better. The people around us worked at Pilot Cotton Mill. A couple of guys worked for the railroad. One guy had a little neighborhood grocery store. My dad had one, but his was on the other side of town. I got my first bicycle, had to have a basket on it so that after school I would go down to the store and make 2 or 3 deliveries, whatever he had ready. Then after that, I'd ride my bicycle back to the other side of town, go home and get my homework done.
At least in our family, and I don't think it was unlike a lot of immigrant families from Lebanon, it was about family first. It was about religion next, and we were Catholics. And it was about, you know, the work ethic, education next. So that was always drummed into us.
The sense of family was so dominant, but very close to it was the sense of education. It was, okay, my grandparents, I don't know how they were formally educated, and I don't know that they instilled this concept in my parents, but these Sunday afternoons, wherever you're having these conversations, it was about how do you better yourself. You don't start anyway. You can be successful in business, or you can do what, and they supported each other in business. But this idea of education was, this is the way that you live this American dream.
My dad's generation were the old people who were the ones who came from Lebanon. And of course, many of them continued to speak Arabic or spoke in halting English. My dad's generation were completely English speaking because they were not allowed to speak Arabic. They could say Aina, hey Aina, or Tini Gibbet Moai, they give me some water. There were a few little endearing expressions and things, but they pushed them very hard to learn to speak and write in English. And so sadly, I guess in a way, but in a way it was a good thing, they became prolific English speakers. I mean, my father became a lawyer, they became successful business people, and obviously in this country, the key to that is being able to speak English.
We all had friends, and I think we were able to, assimilate within most of the things. But I think, it's probably our parents that kept us more attuned to, your background and heritage. The traditions of Lebanon were very strong. I mean, there probably wasn't a day went by we didn't have some of the food. I mean, I think Patricia said it. You sit around and you share food, you share culture.
There was nothing to see 50 people sitting at a table eating on Sunday afternoon. Nothing. I mean, Grandmama had a table that was, 30 feet long? And it was full. I don't know how those women did it, because when I cook now, any Lebanese dish, especially kibbe, it's a very difficult thing to make. Those ladies worked hard.
My Aunt Lucille and my mother every spring would go to some farmer and buy a calf or a couple lambs and fatten them up, and then butcher or the slaughterhouse would deliver half of a cow, half of a lamb, and they would spend all day in the kitchen cutting that up into parcels. You know, this is for gibinai, and this is for stew, and that's for making mishui, whatever it was, they did. And then they froze it and brought it out. So they're very focused on feeding their family.
I wish I could remember his name. He used to make calls at the Lebanese homes and where we could order our food, the Lebanese food. And from New York, and it would be shipped. He'd come make an annual, twice-a-year visit. We'd order the burger and whatever else that we needed. That time they didn't have meaty stores in this area.
A lot of things they had to improvise, you know, because they couldn't get lamb. But there just wasn't good source of lamb in the South, in the United States. And so they switched to ground beef in a lot of the kibbe recipes and the other things like that. And I can remember Mother Rosa sending me to the local grocery down the store corner. And she'd always tell me to get have them slice off a slice of sirloin, run it through the meat grinder, put that aside. That was just to clean the meat grinder at the grocery store. And then get a round steak and trim it, all the fat off of it, nothing on it, no fat, nothing, trim as it could be. And run that through, and then after you got it run it through again to make it pastier for the kibbe. And then bring it straight home so she could get it ready right away while it was fresh.
My kids would have their grandfather come speak to the class, and I remember his idea was to make meat pies. Well, not only did we make meat pies for the class, there were 4 fifth grade classes. So we made meat pies for, how many kids? Was 30 120
Over 100
kids.
people, yeah.
So I did biscuits, which my grandmother would roll over in her grave if she knew I was using cans of biscuits for Toya. We got I made the hashwi, you know, but I didn't do pine nuts. I was being cheap for 120 kids, and they each rolled out their own meat pies.
There was a company in New York that produced an Arabic newspaper. They subscribed to it, and they combed it. You know, each issue that came in, and it was all in Arabic, so I really don't know what it said. I wish I had learned the second language. At the time, I really couldn't be bothered with it. As a kid, I was trying hard to assimilate with the other Anglo-Saxons world that we lived in.
My mother and father understood Arabic more than they could speak Arabic. But my grandmother got she got a newspaper. Oh, she read that newspaper religiously.
We didn't speak Arabic at home except my grandmother. Sometimes I'd hear her talking to my mother or something like that. But by living in Durham, Roxborough, and Mebane and all that stuff, we were away from the Arabic people. There was no Arabic people there. The only time I got back in touch with the Arabic people was in 32 when we moved to Newton.
All the young people in those places from Newbern coming up this way to Raleigh formed an organization, the Lebanese group, and we used to have what is known as hafli.
I would probably remember going to maybe a half a dozen growing up, where they would, all the Lebanese for certain areas of the state would get together. Traditionally, living in South Carolina, we would go to Columbia. Interestingly, though, after I was in college, we went to a hafli here in Charlotte, which is where I met Patricia. So, you know, it kind of broadened the boundaries of the state.
But our parents made us go. Yeah. We didn't want to go. Seriously,
either we had to eat that day or we didn't, you know.
There was an organization called the Hamana Lebanese American Association. And they met once a year at the Tar Heel Club. It's out on Millburney Road, east of Raleigh. It was by a lake, so it was something for the kids to do. And they would all have their meetings. Of course, it was all spoken in Arabic. It was their chance to to interact with each other. And they had wonderful times. They would argue, and they'd fuss, and they'd cuss a little bit. You know, they were good humans, but everybody ended up hugging and kissing before you went home.
We had a good time that way, getting to know each other, and it was very nice. And I stayed in it as long as I could remember it lasted. But it was very nice for all the Lebanese children to meet each other.
The young people got together for dinners. They got together, they had a meeting, so we collected dues. And then we were part of the adult association. They would have a big hafli once a year. Other Lebanese would come from all over the state of North Carolina. Well, we didn't know what we had back in those days, but they kept our heritage alive.
By the early 1970s, the Lebanese American community in North Carolina reflected a pattern common among immigrants. Many from the second and third generations had scattered across the state to start families and businesses. In doing so, they established networks distant from those that were central to the lives of their parents and grandparents. In 1975, a civil war broke out in Lebanon. It lasted for 15 years and claimed the lives of over 150,000 Lebanese and injured hundreds of thousands more. Compounding this internal conflict were recurring Israeli attacks, culminating in a devastating invasion in 1982 and followed by an 18-year occupation. The violence, instability, and accompanying economic crises made life untenable for many. Over the next decades, more than 1.2 million Lebanese left the country. Unlike the first wave, these Lebanese included as many Muslims as Christians, and more often came as individuals or married couples with university degrees or to pursue higher education in America. Their numbers and more intimate connection to Lebanon revitalized the Lebanese American community in North Carolina.
We did not realize at that time how devastating it's going to be, of course, at the beginning of the war. And we didn't understand, how long it's going to take. To us as students, it was a day off when it originally started. It was, hey, we've got a day off. But it didn't take long before it became serious, and we saw it in a different light, where some people that were in our class couldn't come anymore.
We had friends, we had fun. We laughed all the time. We were with our sisters and brother, and we had chores just like, you would with your own family. And to comfort us, they would tell us, listen, they know, everybody, the Christians and the Muslims know in this orphanage there is Muslim kids and Christian kids, so they're not going to bomb here. They know where we are. So, and I don't know if it was true or not, but it made us feel, a little bit better. And really in the whole orphanage, we'd hear bombs everywhere. The one bomb hit the orphanage, and one kid died, and his brother's leg was amputated. And so it's kind of hard.
The first thing, the first probably bullet that you heard in Lebanon when the war broke was about 2 miles away from our house. It was like an early part of 75. And we were still, literally teenagers. I don't remember much about my neighborhood with the fun time. I mean, my childhood with the fun, good time I had. All I remember is from 75 till 85. Because the time it started on 75, it kind of erased all my memory about the good time I have prior to that. We left the house supposedly for 2 hours, 3 hours. We didn't come back to it till about 8 years later. So that's what I remember, is running away from one village to another, hide here, hide there, get over here, there. And, that's how bad it was growing up.
We didn't really enjoy to kind of discover our country, at that point. So we were pretty much confined. in the village, and then obviously we always went to school. School didn't stop really, so we would go under, sometimes some shelling and whatever was going on, and we just walk fast and go to school, and because some of the war was not really in where we are, and was like in faraway areas, so but you could hear it and you could tell maybe it's gonna come on us.
I think it was 3rd and 4th grade. They condensed these 2 years in one academic year because of the many days we had to miss school. And my mom we would be sitting in a basement because of all the shelling, and it wasn't safe to be upstairs. And she would, I remember, have the English book in her hand, workbook, making me go through her homework. It was like homeschooling while school is closed. So it wasn't an excuse that there's no school, then you don't have to study. No, we had to. My brother, they told him, if you don't want to read, then play chess, do something to use your mind, get your mind off what's going on outside, and, educate yourself.
We lived in Harish Tabit. Right facing Harish Tabit was a Palestinian camp called Tal Zata. So before we know it, I was so naive, I didn't know what's going on, boom, 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 bombarding and bombing. I couldn't go to school, senior in high school, I couldn't finish high school. And we had the opportunity, to come to United States. We had visas, and we went, got a student visa this time, to the American Embassy. I remember going through downtown Beirut, and the bombing was so bad we had to crawl on our tummy to hide behind a truck or a bus.
My father and his brothers, they had a bakery, they worked all together. But then with the war, he started kind of a special business. He goes to Beirut, because during the war, they were not able to go to Beirut. So they would come to him like with, let's say, if you want a passport, or you want a visa from the embassy, or you want whatever, what kind, or translation, you're traveling, because lots of people, they fled Lebanon, but you need lots of paperwork. So he would take the paperwork and take it from الخارجية للداخلية whatever, and he would prepare your paperwork and for you. So he changed his business from being a baker to that. And he drove the taxi back and forth also to Beirut while on doing this job.
My mother would occasionally visit, but during the war, we got her out. I told you 73 we went to visit. 75 the war broke out, and so she came out, and we tried to get her to stay here. She came for a couple of years, and then says, "Oh, things are getting better. I'm going back." I say, "Mother, aren't you watching the same news we're watching? How come we're concluding they're not?" She went back in '82, and then the Israeli invasion came up. They bombed Beirut, and she ran to a nephew in Antelias, and quiet and things like this. And so eventually she realized she had to come out. So we brought her out.
From my parents' standpoint, I think the turning point was when my father and my brother got injured. That was number one. Seeing what this is, and now there was resistance to the occupation, and that created, like, every now and then you would see the tanks rolling through the streets.
And they started actually taking young guys, the prisoners.
So that particular time that the Israeli soldiers came to our house, I wasn't in the house. They picked actually the oldest of my brothers, and that was Jihad. He was 16, and sent him to prison.
Like any Lebanese, you're hopeful, tomorrow it will finish, tomorrow it will finish. And it never finished. So finally my parents made the decision that the kids are here studying. My younger brother still was in 10th grade in Lebanon. He was with them. They said, okay, and he was walking one time on the street, got hit a little bit by a scrap from the bullets and the bombing. They made the decision, okay, it's enough, we'll come.
We came here to study and then go back in 3-4 years. I went to grad school, Moise went to grad school. and the war didn't end. I mean, it was unbelievable that it kept going and getting stronger at that point. So we had to choose, we can't go back and no jobs, and our families didn't really want us to come back if we can stay here.
شو بدي أعمل؟ وقع الضرب، ما بقى فيني أحكي، بكيت كتير وتعذبت كتير، انقهرت كتير. أول ولد راح من البيت وهذا الكبير، كتير انقهرت، كتير مش أنا وبيو. بس شو بدنا نعمل؟ صار يكتب لنا وبعتنا مكاتيب من هونيك. صرنا أوقات لما يطول تيكتب نروح نحكي على التليفون. ومشي الحال، تعودنا، شو بدنا نعمل؟
It was very, very difficult, especially on my mom. And it is to this day. Every time I talk to her on the phone 28 years later, she cries on the phone every time we talk. And it's very hard for her to see me so far away. But it was inevitable. I mean, there was no choice but to do what we did. And their hope was that 3 years and 4 years I'll be back. And as things got worse and worse in Lebanon between 1983 and 1991, it was obvious that, and they were convinced that I should not come back. And then as I got into my career and started really in the field of pharmaceutical research, it became obvious to me that going back to Lebanon to have a career there was not a possibility.
You have the school, that was tough. You're on your own. Your sister, youngest sister, who's 16, was kind of, you felt bad. I felt bad for her. And, I'm having a hard time. My brother was having a hard time because he had just gotten here. So, and my two other sisters are, in the middle of the war. We don't know whether they're alive or dead. It was really, the lines were so bad at the time. So you have it bad from every angle.
You started from underground, and it was pretty tough. It was really tough. How did I like it? Well, I'll be honest and I'll be sincere. This country, I owe this country more than I owe it any other place in the world. I love it. It's my country. I can say it's my second home now. I say because I've lived here more than I lived in Lebanon. I raised my kids. My kids were born here. I owe it my life. But the first 4 or 5 years in it just left a few scars.
The very first week, somebody called us terrorists. That's when it was like they were bombing, when they bombed the embassy. So, and I was thinking to myself, like, I'm 18 years old. I've never been, I have never done anything bad, and he's calling me a terrorist. So I felt pretty bad about that. So I kept on thinking, whatever I'm going to do, I'm going to represent my country well.
When I first got married and moved to the South, when they bombed the military in the airport in Lebanon, I was scared to say I'm Lebanese. Back then, I think like 600 or some soldiers lost their life in the airport in Lebanon. So I felt it then. And then the next shock was 9/11. Right at the time of 9/11, we all did this. Where is this? Lebanese and American flags. We all wore it. We made some for all the community here in Charlotte. And to say, hey, we're not bad people.
We are the only Muslim, the only Arab in this neighborhood. And when we first moved here, you can see there's a question mark on the faces, and which is normal, I think. I don't. So getting to know those people closer and becomes friends and knowing each other and dealing with them on a daily basis, the connection that we've made, I'm so proud of it.
We're passing through this world, and all we can hope for is that we leave good vibes behind us, And I think we have, not only me and my family, but I think most immigrants that come to the U.S. leave that. In fact, I personally think America is the best country because of its immigrants, because of being able to melt in the pot and bring your thoughts, bring your beliefs, and be more understanding of other people.
Every coin has two sides, right? The positive side, unfortunately, of the war is you start value the intangible stuff. For example, you spend your life building a castle, and overnight somebody runs you out of the castle, or a bomb comes in and just destroys it, right? and all of a sudden you find yourself a refugee. Thank goodness we were never refugees. But none of the material stuff matters when you see those examples. What matters are the, like Lama said, the stuff that nobody can take away from you.
I just love what the Lebanese culture brings, the warmth that is in between people, the ability to really enjoy yourself in a group environment and have thorough fun, and also enjoy different aspects of the culture that are more cosmopolitan, more international than I find in some of my American friends. I just love that. And so I promised myself from the early days that I will be a bridge between the two.
Born Lebanese, it's in me. It's like your mom and your dad. My mom is Lebanon, my dad is United States. You can't separate the both of them. And it feels like you're from divorced parents. My mom is back there and I'm living here with my dad. You can't, I'm part of both worlds.
You almost feel like you don't belong there in Lebanon, you don't belong here. You're in another world or whatever. It seems like you don't, even, at the time I felt that, but I felt maybe I could kind of get used to life here, which I did. But even to this day, you feel like you're not 100% American, you're not 100% Lebanese. If we go there because we like it there, but then you find things that are so irritating, and the chaos in driving and or law or whatever, and so you kind of don't fit there.
أنا زرت أمريكا مش من زمان، كانت أول زيارة لإلي. والله. رحت أنا ومرتي على أمريكا. أول رياكشن كانت عند مرتي إنه تعال ليش حتى نرجع لبنان، خلينا نبقى بأمريكا. الناس اللي بيحبوا يكونوا عايشين بنظام بكادر واضح، ما في مشاكل، ما في فوضى، مش كاوتيك يعني هيدا، بيفضلوا مليون مرة يضلوا يبقوا بأمريكا ما يرجعوا لبنان. لما عم بيرجعوا من بلد من برا، طبعا نحكي بس عن امريكا، لما عم بيرجعوا عم بيلاقوا هالفوضى الموجوده، ان كان من السير او من التنظيم او من الدوائر الرسميه اللي انت بدك تعمل امورك، هالفوضى اللي موجوده ما عم بتحمس الناس، ما بتخليهم يحسوا انه they belong، بعد عم بينتموا لهالارض اللي هن حلموا فيها من وقت ما كانوا بامريكا لليوم.
Before I was married, I wanted to take them back. And Dad said, son, why do I want to go? I said, Dad, go back. He says, no. He says, I see pictures of what Lebanon is now. There's dual-lane highway, big hotels. It's a mountain resort area. He says, I remember Havana with dirt streets and goats and chickens. That's not my home.
Geography and identity should not be mistaken for each other. You are yourself wherever you are. Now you might not be in your element, but it's part of your identity wherever you find yourself. The geography then becomes part of your identity then.
الجذور اللبنانية من أصل بيخلق لبناني، خلص جذور لبناني، ما في يقول مش لبناني، ما في يتخلى عن جذوره، جذور متأصلة بالأرض، ما في يتخلى عن الجذور. طبعا العائلة.
We feel as parents that by going back to Lebanon, seeing their relatives, their grandparents, understanding how people live there, what their parents actually were living through when they went to Lebanon, made them much stronger.
Even though we are doing as our duties as parents to teach them the Lebanese culture, but it's so hard when most of their times are spent in school and watching TV and everything. But through the Triangle Lebanese Association, and we opened a school on Saturday to teach Arabic school, and through it they went and actually learned the dancing and the debke, and they learned all the folkloric dancing. So it nurtured on them the love of the Lebanese culture to reinforce what we do with them here at home.
You've got people that came here in the early 1900s. I mean, you hear their grandkids telling you, Yeah, my grandfather was from Lebanon, but they melted in the pot real good. Okay, nowadays, you know, it's not as necessary. In the old days, you had to, because you couldn't go to Lebanon every month. You couldn't go to Lebanon every summer. You couldn't go to Lebanon every 4 or 5 years for a reunion, which is what we're going to do with my family. The technology wasn't there. So nowadays, it's, I mean, it's good and bad. You have the contact to Lebanon. I mean, you know, hopefully maybe someday I'll retire and, you know, maybe spend half a year in Lebanon, half a year here in the U.S. I mean, you know, that would be the ultimate. But in the old days, you didn't have that choice.
وصرنا هنا لقيت خيبي قال لي يا سيسيليا ليكي رأيي لك انه بدك تعملي بزنس لاولادك تيضلوا بفرد مدينة واذا ما عملتي بيصيروا كل واحد بولاية. نعملي قويوا الاولاد وصاروا نشكر الله انه مشي الحول. أنا قلت لهم يا أمي نحن منعودين على شغلات لبنانية، بنعمل فطاير وبنعمل لحمة بعجين وبنعمل أشياء بعجين بيستاهلوها. عملنا شو كيس برا فوتوا والله هني تعودوا على هالشغلات وجنوا يقصدوا من تشابل هيل تيجوا يتغدوا عنا.
First thing you do, the first day, you come visit. When I bought the house here, before my wife even saw it, I asked somebody, is there a Middle Eastern bakery or restaurant in this area? So they said, oh yeah, there's one Neomon somewhere and things. So number one requirement is Middle Eastern food.
At the time when a lot of our grandparents were passing, or getting to the age where everybody didn't go visit everybody as much, or we were in college maybe, and we didn't get to spend the time with our grandparents and see the visits, they opened Neomond. So then, the Lebanese community started eating there, and the children, my generation, would start to meet other people in our generation, and that's where the sense of connection.
As of now, we would run into people where he'd say, I still remember when I visit your bakery, your mom will meet me at the door and gives me fresh bread to try.
يلا كل حدا يقول أنا حرام كيف بده يشم ريحة هالخبز الحلوة يلا حبيبي طعام نقي أحلى رغيف وقول له خدكم.
The tradition. Sampling was a tradition in the family.
وبعدين حدا بده يلا تشيل قل لهم هودا يبقى دامج بريد انه منه رافخ او شيء شيل الكيس وقول لهم يلا صحتين هلا بعدين بيجوا هلا بيسالوا كنتي طعمينه بالفرن.
يعني we're serving the second generation.
Yeah.
People walked in at age 5 and 10. They're 40s, so they're children walking in.
Hummus, baba ganoush, tabbouleh. We grew up with these things. And it was amusing to us that all of a sudden people were having restaurants and serving these things and people were eating them and talking about how wonderful they were. I mean, it was amusing and fun and funny and yes. And I think that the whole fact that many people have begun to embrace the Mediterranean food has played a role in us being a big role in us being very proud of our Lebanese culture. No question about that.
In regard of promoting the Lebanese cultures, I consider it as an educational for my home here. I consider it as for the kids that never knew what Lebanese and what Middle Eastern is. If you teach them that stuff, you're doing your community and the home you're living in a favor. I'm doing it not because I want to enforce it on you. No, I'm more American than I am Lebanese at this point. But I want those kids to grow up knowing what it is Lebanese besides seeing it on WRAL. Or the News and Observer. Lebanon is all about war. Lebanon is all about religions. No, this is not what Lebanon is.
I try to be very involved in the PTA where Amr, my youngest, attends school. And I know lots of parents. And as you can imagine, the Lebanon subject comes up all the time, whether it's the food, the restaurants, friends they know. And they want me to show them how to make the baklava, which I did many times. And so yeah, this interaction with the people, and it's very interesting, because when they get to know you closer, I think they can see a different face than what they read in the media. And I'm happy to be in this situation.
I think for any human being, we got to know who we are. And that heritage is part of that. You know, so we're proud to be North Carolinians. We love our barbecue, and we're proud to be Americans. We're proud to be Catholics. We're proud to be human beings, part of the human race. And we're proud to be Lebanese. So that's where it fits in.
This country and this state and this area is really a cosmopolitan area in many ways. We are a mishmash of multiple cultures, and that's not very visible. And by highlighting my culture, I love the fact that it hopefully makes others also highlight aspects of their cultures that are unique or that are different. And it really contributes to the sense that this place is a great place because of that.
Over the past 120 years, the Lebanese have created a rich legacy in North Carolina. They have built businesses from humble beginnings and innovative ideas, and grew them into thriving enterprises essential to the state's economy. They brought their faith, along with their dreams and hopes for the future. Their kitchens enthrall our senses with recipes crafted across generations, and their music and dance fill our festivals and neighborhoods with sights and sounds that convey the richness of the Lebanese culture. But their legacy rests as much in the quiet and unassuming. A singular doctor in a small mountain town, or a car mechanic at a Piedmont crossroads, become vital threads in the fabric of this state. Lebanese cedars among the pines of North Carolina.
القلب إليك يهوى بالحق أنت كسلوى أنت الوحيدة العليا أمريكا يا محلاكي نعطي الأرواح فداكي ما دمنا تحت حماك نعتز فيك ونقوى أنت أم الغرباء أنت ماء الأحياء لرجالها ونسائي تعطي المن والسلوى علم النجوم هلالي به من علينا العالي وبظل رئيس الحال تنسر النفس وتحيا أمريكا يا حلوة القلب إليك يهوى بالحق أنت كسلوى أنت الوحيدة العليا أوهبتينا المدارس والطفل صار كفارس أنت الملاك الحارس أنت الضياء الأبهى من يقدر يعاديك ورب السماء حاميك ورجالك تفديك نرمي الأعادي ببلوى تحت ظل النجوم قد أخذنا العلوم صيحوا بين العموم تحيا أمريكا العليا أمريكا يا حلوة القلب إليك يهوى بالحق أنت كسلوى أنت الوحيدة العليا